Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another 18 Minutes with 180 Markets interview. Friends, we certainly know and are aware that market conditions over the last 6 and even 12 months have gotten more challenging. And that's why it's even more important than ever to control what we can control. And one of the things as an investor we can control is that risk-reward relationship. We know how much we can invest, and we are also looking for those businesses that have that huge potential upside. That's right. And this is within our control. And that's why I'm thrilled today to be joined by Michael Moore of Golden State Mining, because Golden State is exactly this type of investment where if there's any type of big discovery, the share price certainly will have a multiple type of effect of where it is today. And with us to talk all about it and what's coming up, because that's always the key, Michael Moore, welcome.
Thanks, Greg. Good to be here and good to bring you up to date with what's going on at Golden State.
Great. Hey, Michael, you're the founder of Golden State a number of years back now. Can you just tell us, back up for a moment, what attracted you to these assets in the first place?
Well, for me, I'd worked in the sector for a number of years, and there were good elements about how we operated as a sector, but there were also some things that I, wasn't particularly pleased with. And so for me, it was an opportunity to effectively start with a blank slate, put together a team of people with whom I'd had great outcomes over the years. So I went looking for assets, basically for an IPO, a clean company, a new company, and a WA-focused company, which is where we had our strengths, but also I think from an investor perspective, it's probably one of the best jurisdictions to be investing in the world if you're interested in minerals and exploration. It's very easy for us to define a pathway to production. There's good administration and management of tenements and assets. From a government perspective, there's consistency of rules and law, and that's really, really important. It means we can go about our day-to-day business of exploration, knowing that we're not going to get suddenly sideswiped by a sort of massive change in legislation. So for me, it was bringing together some assets that were WA focused and commodities that people understood. One of the hardest things in our business is marketing the opportunity to investors and attracting those investors. If you're involved in an obscure commodity, it just makes it really, really difficult for people to understand what value could be derived from their investment. So for us at that time, it was a focus on gold, but also by virtue of our ground in the Pilbara at Ewell, which isn't far from Hemi, that had lithium prospectivity, and that was something that really attracted us. So when we listed, we had three assets. We had Kew in the Murchison, we had Ewell in the Pilbara, and we had 4 Mile Well near Laverton. So two of those projects, Kew and Laverton, were very much gold focused. And the Ewell project, we understood that it had some gold prospectivity, but originally it had been pegged in the mid-2000s for tantalum. And so we knew that there were the right granites there. There's the Split Rock Supersuite, which is a very fertile granite. So we knew we had the right environment there for a potential lithium discovery. But of course, 4.5, 5 years ago, lithium wasn't necessarily in the ascendance. It was slowly rising. But of course, now the great thing about lithium and gold is that they're understood in equal measure by investors, and that's important. So those projects had all the right ingredients. It was all WA. We could manage it effectively. And we had reasonable ground positions, and we were thinking differently. So with Kew, there was a lot of shallow surface mineralization. We had a hunch that maybe there was some sort of deeper system feeding that. And so we went in there and we drilled it, and we drilled some pretty deep diamond holes, and we disproved the theory. And that's exploration. But you've got to have big ambitions, because shareholders want decent returns for that risk that they're taking with their money. So we like to think big, and we like to amass, good ground positions. And that's what we had at IPO. And there was definitely plenty there to excite those investors. But it was a really difficult time, Greg. As you remember,
Yes.
Back into 2018 was a tough time in the market, but we pulled it over the line. And since that day, we've been drilling and exploring furiously.
Right. And you mentioned big ambitions, and part of your big ambitions are also big land holdings. Can you just talk about the size of them? Because it's one of the things that stood out on our radar screen immediately.
Yeah, absolutely. Look at Ewell in the Pilbara, for instance. We listed with about 350 square kilometers, but we built that to 700. Most of that expansion was pre the Hemi discovery, obviously, because now it's almost impossible to get ground up there. But there's no doubt that after the guys at De Grey, we are the most active explorer in the region, without a shadow of a doubt, in terms of the meters that we've drilled there, and that's important for investors. We also, about 18 months ago, put our lithium expert and our geophysicist effectively in a dark room for 10 days and said, come out of that room with a lithium target area for us. So a lot of the low-hanging fruit, the known stuff, had been picked up by companies, but we again wanted a significant ground position somewhere where people weren't necessarily looking for lithium, but one that had the potential and had the pedigree, i.e. the right geological environment. They came back to us and said, look, we think this area sort of to the northeast and south of Paynes Find has the right ingredients in terms of the age of granites. And there are also some lithium and beryl occurrences up in that region. So what we wanted ultimately from that was to secure something at low cost for investors. So we managed to secure 1,200 square kilometers around Paynes Find. And what that does is it gives us a lot of optionality. We've already conducted 2 significant soil surveys there, one of which we've reported, the second of which will be reported on in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And we've already generated lithium targets out of that. So that to me says that, we got it right on the money, and that we've established a significant position there. We've got 5,000 square Ks in the state. We've just sold the Q project. So we've managed to monetize that for investors and put some money back in the business. We're pretty cutthroat about this. If the project continues to deliver in each round of exploration, we'll retain it. If it doesn't, well, then we'll look to move it on or drop it. There's no point in muddying the waters. We're out there for discovery. We've also picked up some good ground positions down at the Eucla. That's a sort of nickel, base metals nickel opportunity there. Whether we ultimately do something with that ourselves, I don't know. But it's got some, great geophysics down there. I mean, really, really exciting. It was too good not to get our foot on it, basically. But the main focus for us at the moment is Ewell in the Pilbara with lithium and gold, lithium at Southern Cross, and lithium at Paynes Find. And we've also got gold at Southern Cross. We've got about 600 square Ks there, an area where we think there's possibly a buried greenstone unit. And we've just, about 6 weeks ago, finished a soil sampling campaign there, and results due out in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And that will hopefully give us some gold targets to drill with air core a little bit later this year. So that's the key focus: Ewell Pilbara, lithium at Paynes Find, and gold at Southern Cross.
Right. And Paynes Find, you mentioned it that I believe it's the 4-mile well area that you have results that are imminently coming out.
Yeah.
Can you just discuss that program and what you're hoping to find?
Sure. So 4-mile well was part of the IPO package, and we had a tenement there just north of the Lancefield mine, and a mine that a number of people will probably know and recognize. We felt that area had opportunities for gold and or nickel discovery. We've drilled the first tenement that we had, and we didn't get enough in the results for it to warrant any follow-up, but we did do air core drilling. We subsequently applied for 2 tenements to the north of it because there was some old WMC soils work that was undertaken, good old WMC.
Yeah.
And what it suggested was that the prospectivity for sort of gold and nickel was increasing further to the north. So we applied for those 2 tenements. We drilled the second tenement, and again, we didn't get enough in that to warrant further work. That last tenement was granted not so long ago. So we put an air core rig on there to drill the target area, the area where we had the noise in terms of the soils, and we're just waiting for those results. For me, it's a pretty binary outcome. It'll be something or it'll be nothing. If it's something, there's something interesting there, we'll be back out there drilling it. If it's nothing, well, that's the end of that project, basically. There's no point in spending any more money on it, and we will just fold that away and concentrate on the other 3. So for us, as I said, we're not there to spin a yarn. We are there to make a discovery, and there's no point in pretending to shareholders that there's some sort of inherent prospectivity when you believe and your technical people believe there isn't. You're much better focused on the areas that are genuinely exciting the technical team. So it's important for investors to understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. And also with 5,000 square kilometers, it's not like, I suppose, there's any reason to just focus on an area that's kind of not that exciting, I suppose.
Absolutely. We pick up ground if it displays pedigree early on in those first phases of exploration. It'll, initially when you pick it up, it might be on the basis of some geophysics. You'll get out there, you'll ground truth it, you'll walk it, you'll do some mapping, you'll do some soil sampling. And then if that delivers the goods in terms of anomalism that you think is unusual and not necessarily reflective of the background, so there's something going on there, it'll be air core drilling and then follow up with RC diamond, and then hopefully you're on to building a resource. So it's a fairly simple process. But if at any stage it's not making the grade, as it were, then you've simply got to push that thing away. You can't get emotionally involved in it. And my background is as a mining engineer, but I've been in this sort of side of the business, the exploration side, for probably over a decade now. And so I tend to be a little bit more brutal about it. Do I think there's an ore body there? And if it is, do I think it could be economic? And if it isn't, well, then there's no point in persisting with it, because at some point you're going to get caught out, and you might as well move on and get on to the next thing. That's what investors want you to do that thorough, detailed investigation. Is it something? Great, push it forward. If not, then you move it aside and get on with the next. But there's a constant process of ensuring that you've got a flow of good projects coming into the business and that you're doing that diligent work.
Gotcha. Michael, the engineer side of you certainly is coming out here right now.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's a disability in some instances.
We can debate that another time.
Yeah.
Activity. You are out there to really to make those big discoveries. The next 6 months going to be very active for Golden State. Just talk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly in terms of the lithium and gold focus at Ewell in the Pilbara, where we're just completing today a heritage survey ahead of drilling. So the plan is a combination of RC and air core drilling in the next couple of months. So that's really important, because as you know, late last year we indicated to the market that we had a genuine lithium prospect at Nomad. A lot of technical work has gone into that. We drilled that with RC. We came back with some quite crazy cesium numbers. Now, cesium's a good indicator of the presence of an LCT pegmatite, but it's not a very mobile element, right? So to find that in drill core at the concentrations that we had at 421 parts per million over 6 meters, you don't see that unless you're within hundreds of meters of an LCT. Now, that's not to say that this LCT is an economic proposition, but what it says is that we're in the right area and the targeting has been correct. And so we're going back there with RC, and the intention is to try and find this pegmatite, and hopefully then off the back of that we can drill it further, and who knows what may come of that. So Ewell is a very important component of our activity this year. Right. And then Payne's Find, obviously those 2 soil campaigns over that 1,200 square Ks will deliver hopefully some additional lithium target areas, and the plan is to drill that this year with air core. And then likewise for Southern Cross in terms of gold targets, those results, as I said, will be out in the next 2 or 3 weeks, and our hope is to generate a number of gold target areas that we can follow up with air core. But Greg, it's an interesting time for the industry right now. I mean, I've been involved in it for a number of decades now, and never have I seen the mining industry so prominent in the press, and probably for all the positive reasons, because I think people are starting to understand if we're going to make this transition away from fossil fuels, right, the mining industry plays an important part, an important role in delivering that. The challenge for the industry has always been that is funding, but what we're being expected to deliver over the next few decades is unprecedented in terms of delivering minerals to a massively demanding market that will facilitate this energy transition. And we're talking about all the key metals here: the zincs, the coppers, the lithiums,
Right.
the silvers. We can't do it unless we amp up our exploration and rate of discovery. Now, traditionally, it's been left to the plucky junior like Golden State and others to go out there, put it all on the line in an area and explore in an area where people think you're completely nuts, right? And you turn out a discovery. Let's look at Chalice for instance. Their
Sure.
discovery north of Perth, right? So, but we're not going to get there, Greg. We're not going to get there, and we're not going to meet that future demand unless we think differently about how we fund exploration for critical minerals, but also the bog standard minerals such as copper. We are going to fall way short, and everybody's crowing about it right now.
Right.
So the important thing is to understand, how can we effectively fund that future exploration? That's certainly something that we've turned our minds to in terms of trying to engage with industrial groups and saying, look, guys, you've outlined a demand, and where are you going to get that supply from?
Sure.
And it's a very, very competitive market out there. So it's my belief that these industrials are going to have to look at well-run, active junior companies that have got ground in good areas with good pedigree and a demonstrated track record of exploration activity. And they're going to have to get involved, because we're just not going to get there. We can't be left to the whims and the sentiment of the market to fund this important work that we're doing. And especially for a state like Western Australia, where we're supplying effectively half the world's lithium, and you think how that's going to grow over the next decade, that demand for lithium. There's a massive opportunity here, but we're not going to get there unless we are strategic about how we fund these businesses. So for me, it's a bit of a thing with me in terms of securing that consistent funding, because then we can be much more aggressive, and we can challenge, and we can create some really big ideas and hypotheses and go and test those without investors wanting to lynch us. Because we might design a program of 20,000 meters, and if after 5,000 meters we haven't got a result, the investors will be calling for your head and they think you're mad. But inevitably, it's never until the last bloody drill hole that you actually, you drill that ore body. How many times have we seen that? Companies down to the last, 10 grand in the bank. So I think there needs to be a bit of a shift in terms of how we view exploration companies, and also how they're funded.
Yeah, you always find something in the last place you look. That's the story of life.
That's right. That's right.
Hey, Michael, unfortunately, we have to keep these interviews fairly short. Just in closing, if there are a couple of points that you want to close with, that you want every investor, if they know nothing else about Golden State, what would they be? I
think we're a company that's pretty open and transparent. So if people want to find information, or they want to understand what we're doing, we're very active. We produce videos and content because we want people to understand what we're doing. But for us, the key thing is that we're WA focused, and we're involved in exploration for gold and lithium. And I think they're great partners, and they're great minerals to be searching for in this particular state. And we've got a really active program through the mid and back end of this year. And there's no doubt that as a company, we have got a track record of putting holes in the ground. And if you're not putting holes in the ground, you're not giving investors a chance of that exciting discovery. So really, that's it in a nutshell for our company. I couldn't think of anything better to say, Michael. Michael, thank you so much. We really look forward to these results coming through, not only in the next few weeks, but also in the next few months and years to come. Great to chat, Greg. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks for watching another episode of 18 Minutes with 180 Markets. And don't forget, if you want access to thousands of capital raises, sign up at 180markets.com.au and you'll get access to our very next capital raise. Thanks for watching.